Hello everyone, welcome back to another season review, but this time it's the return of Bronze. My word then, after less than a season it is returned to action and we're at home of the British, well the home of motorsport I think we are. It is the British Grand Prix. We've had the Hilton to have taken us through in the comms box. Unfortunately we've got me for the season review alongside the double world champion Emerson. Emerson, how are you doing my good sir?
Yeah, doing well. I mean, it seems like a long time ago that I was talking over this race for this. It's been a really short season, but it's absolutely flown by. I mean, I can't even really remember what happened in this race, so it's a good thing we've got these highlights to refresh our memory.
Indeed, and of course, the reason why you probably can't remember what happened because there was so much action, wasn't there? At the beginning of the season, Crystal May started off absolutely fantastically, didn't he? He was dominating the qualifying session, but in the race, it was a completely different story. Emerson, I must say, and I've said in the past that if there's one thing that you really struggled on, was your qualifying performance, especially in season 2 and 3. But goodness me, the last 2 seasons you've been absolutely immense. Then, but how difficult is it then to be really good at one discipline, not the other?
Yeah, it's just trying to find that balance. When it's obviously you just got to put the practice in to get that one lap pace just as good as your race pace is. Obviously in qualifying it's just as important as the race, because the higher you qualify the easier the race is usually, because there's less traffic involved and everything. So yeah, you want to get on that time trial and perfect that kind of one lap pace, and make sure that in qualifying you pull it off, so that it makes your race on paper a lot easier than having to fight through the field and start further back.
We just seen the silver review, and we were saying about how qualifying wasn't really that important because of the grid was so close. In bronze, and I must say that we got a lot of debutants and a lot of new drivers that have never raced in ALR before. We got a couple of drivers that have returned. For example, Lewis Williams, who was a part of the gold division, I think, for a couple of races at the beginning with the Ferrari team. I think he was known as Dodgy at the time, but now he's known as Lewis Williams. We've also got Cameron Racer, and I think he started his 30th Grand Prix. In bronze. That race has flown by then, so we're just watching Crystal Mason come over the brow of the hill with a lot of penalties in this first ever race in bronze. Well, not the first ever race, the first race of the season in bronze for season 3. Crystal Mason comes across the line now and takes the first win of the season. That looked quite a controlled race there. Dylan, who of course a lot of people were talking about in the drivers brief, and that it was going to be Dylan who was the championship favourite. Crystal Mason went from pole position to checker flag with Dylan in second, Crypto Gallop in third. Roscoe, of course, another driver returning in 4th position there. A certain Ginger Rage in 6th position, fantastic. We're just taking a look down the order as well. And there was only 2 retirements in the open round. And that was fantastic stuff indeed. So Crystal Mays leads then, of course, is As You Were then from the Silverstone at Resorts then. And of course, we just flick through to the constructors as well. And Ferrari have got a very early lead as well. Ferrari don't seem to do well in ALR, do they? Red Bull and Ferrari are 2 teams it seems like that we got a grudge against those 2 teams. But I think Ferrari's definitely putting that vicious rumour to one side then. We're now on the Belgian Grand Prix then. I say this is the best racetrack in the world. Emerson, what do you like this track then? I got to say, you've got bad memories going up into a Rouge and Radion then. But overall, what do you reckon of this circuit?
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant circuit. Obviously, other than that incident that I did have last season, almost 2 seasons ago now, I guess. But just as we're going up the hill now, it's quite similar to kind of what almost happened there. But I remember this race vividly. Actually, it's probably one of my favourite out of all the bronze races, because I'm pretty sure we get it on stream. But Theo's overtake, in my opinion, it was in the wet towards the end of the race, I think, and just coming through the chicane at this point, he made an absolutely amazing overtake. It was just amazing. I think, definitely should. Obviously, we'll see in the awards later on if he does win the overtake of the season. But I remember it and commentating on it. It was just absolutely textbook, and it was a perfect move up into that chicane. But yeah, I do really like this track. Obviously, there's lots of room for overtaking. It's got a bit of everything around this track. It's just such a long circuit as well that if you do get any damage earlier on in that lap, then you really suffer for it, because you've obviously got to carry all that damage. Like if we've seen a couple of the Red Bulls here, Vardy, Wee and Sir Dave picking up a bit of front wing damage, and you've got to carry that all around down the hill and all the way back to the pits through the bus stop and everything. So it's a good circuit, but it's definitely one. It's a classic kind of track, isn't it? So you've got to be quite careful in some corners and really prepare well for this one.
It is definitely one of my favourite tracks. You talked about the length of the track as well. Does that change your approach as we just watching Leclerc and Roscoe really duel it out into last order? So look at Theo, then he's in third position as well. Then I've got to say he was very much a mainstay in this Belgian Grand Prix. But we'll come back to the track length in a minute then, because goodness me, then we've got a Webber and Alonso kind of esque manoeuvre here. Goodness gracious me, then oh wow, as they're all over each other. My word, going up into the Kemmel Straight and then coming up into Lake Como as well. It's you mentioned it's a long track, Emerson. How does that change your approach then going into a Grand Prix?
Yeah, it definitely does, because obviously you don't really want to get any kind of damage or do exactly that coming up the hill and kind of ruin your race earlier on a lap. So yeah, it kind of does change your approach, but then obviously because a lap's longer and there's less laps, I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one. You kind of take it a little bit differently, but I wouldn't say change it a lot different, because you just kind of get into the rhythm, don't you, and get your head down and do your race. But yeah, looking at Theo, Theo definitely had his porridge this morning. I'm not sure if it was in Bottas's car or Hamilton's, but yeah, he had a cracking race on this day. So yeah, he makes a lot of good moves throughout the race. I can't remember where he must definitely finish on the podium. I'm not quite sure if he does. But does he win? I'm not sure. We'll probably see in a minute anyway. But yeah, obviously the rain starts to come down in a minute, and a lot of the drivers do time it to perfection to the intermediate tyres, don't they? And I think obviously the safety car helps massively, because I think actually, well, yeah, in fact, all of them come in under the safety car, I think, don't they? And then this is when the rain hits, and I think this is when Theo makes his move just in a second. There's a couple of cars there going into the wall. Yeah, you don't really want to be doing that earlier on, but yeah.
And of course, the rain did come there as Booty Delights there going for a beautiful spin there. Because with the rain coming down there, then of course, there, how do you change your approach knowing that the rain is going to come then? So I think this is the Theo overtake now, isn't it? I've got to say, we're building up to this Theo overtake. Let's hope it's a cracker, shall we? I know it's a cracker, actually. It's one of my favourites of the season, actually. So I love this one. As we come up to the top of Lake Com, and wow. Yeah, how that was so coolly done there. I think that's a lot better than Hamilton and Rosberg did then in 2014. Emerson, of course, you are a double world champion. You're very good at the overtaking prowess as well. Talk us through that move if you can.
Well, I think he kind of judged the braking of Leclerc to perfection going into the chicane, because obviously Leclerc was on the inside line, and he kind of guessed that he was always going to brake later, so he kind of broke earlier, waited for Leclerc to wash out wide, switched back to the inside, which then turned to the outside, and then for the third part of the chicane, which is the end of it, he obviously then had the inside, so he kind of thought ahead rather than thought about what was happening at that point, which is exactly what you've got to do in that kind of situation, as he loses that position in the end, but yeah, it's a shame there for Theo, because that was a really good move, and he was forward thinking rather than thinking what was actually happening in that current time, and that's like the perfect mindset you need when it comes to overtaking.
Unfortunately, that's why I'm not a very good race driver, because unfortunately I can't think at the time or in the present or in the future. So yeah, there you go. I think Leclerc won that race, and the results was a bit backwards by looks. I don't think Dylan won this one, if I'm right in saying that. But it was Leclerc, his first Grand Prix win of his career. Fantastic stuff indeed there for Leclerc. Of course, this was before he became a Racing Point driver. Indeed, before he became a Racing Point driver. Then got to say, it was quite a challenging Grand Prix. We started off in the wet. We started from the dry, we went to the wet tire, we went to the rain towards the end, and of course, going into Spa, you definitely have to think about the rain, don't you? Reflections there, it's a bit about consistency for Reflections and Dylan thus far, so that's why they lead the championship. Roscoe and Crystal Maze has had the pace there, but they just can't get the consistency in the bottom three at the moment. Now we've got 6 drivers who haven't got off the mark yet, unfortunately. But of course, they've still got plenty of races to get that sorted. I say plenty of racing. Of course, it's a short season there. Only 11 Grand Prix. Ferrari leading the Constructors' Championship, but Haas are 4 points behind now. They're very much reeling them in there. As we go on to the Temple of Speed. It's the Italian Grand Prix. Belgium and Italy then. From an untrained man like myself, Emerson, as Sam gets his first pole position of his career in ALR. And I must say that was a fantastic lap there for Sam. But before oh goodness me, there's debris all over the show, and I think that was me actually. But of course, talk about Sam's pole position first before we talk about the track. Then, how good was that lap there from Sam?
Yeah, he was quick throughout qualifying. To be honest, I kind of quite remember it, and yeah, he was quick in Q1, Q2, and Q3, and it was a shame that he couldn't quite get it done in the race. I think the safety car was really unlucky kind of timing for him on the medium tyres, but yeah, he was quick all weekend, which I think Monza, because I know Sammy does use a wheel that I think it's one of the circuits that you kind of do have a bit of an advantage on using the wheel just because of the two Lesbos and through the Irish chicane, it's quite easier to manoeuvre the car through that part of the circuit. Not saying that that's taking anything away from Sammy, he did an amazing job, but I think, yeah, because of the safety car on this lap, I think he boxes under this safety car or something happens and he just does get quite lucky, and he does also get a lot of penalties, I believe, which was kind of a bit of Sammy's downfall throughout the whole season. I think there was another race, or was it this one, that he forgot to load us up? I think that might have been Hungary, actually, because of a race restart. So yeah, it was just kind of Sammy, he showed a lot of pace in qualifying a lot of the time, but in the race situations he seemed to pick up a lot of penalties, which yeah, it's just one of those things that you've kind of got well, you just got to do a lot of laps and learn where the track limits are and try not to take too much speed into some corners. But yeah, he had amazing pace throughout this race. It's definitely one that he could have won, but unfortunately, because of this, the things that happened during the race, he just got quite unlucky, I think.
And you talk about penalties there. How difficult is it not to get penalties in the race side? Because we're going back to your career again, but you are a driver that doesn't seem to pick up a lot of penalties. Then how do you do that? Is it just about focus? Is it just taking it steady into the corners? What do you do?
Well, I think it's just learning the track limits, to be honest. Like, I personally spend a lot of time on time trial. That's where I do a lot of the practice. And obviously, in time trial, it works exactly like the track limits would in a race situation. So I kind of use that to learn where you can exploit the track a little bit more than what you think and different lines. And yeah, it's just trying to learn where you can push the limits of the car and the track to gain that little advantage, because that's all qualifying really is that those fine margins where I think I've seen a lot of even in bronze, to be honest, we've seen a lot of times come down to hundreds and thousands because it's been that close. So yeah, that's probably just the drivers exploiting the little bit of the track. As we've just seen those two Mercedes come together, that's not how you want to do the first chicane.
Certainly isn't, indeed, is it? I was just watching Sam in RDW. I think it's RDW's best performance to date in bronze, doing a very stellar job indeed. Then Theo unfortunately dropping down to the back of the field after his clash with his teammate. Unfortunately, then Reflection leading the Grand Prix of Leclerc in second position. Jamie doing a great job in a third position as well in the McLaren now. I think this is his first full-time drive with the McLaren, if I'm not very much mistaken. I think I am, actually. His camera race has gone right into the wall. I'm actually shocked by what happened there. I think there was a technical failure, wasn't there, on his steering wheel, where it just veered him now to the left-hand side violently going into Curva Grande. And another safety car as well. And this was not very good then for the drivers that they got penalties. So look at the amount of penalties on that left-hand side tower. Jamie had no penalties at all, and nor did Morrisky, if I'm not very much mistaken, and nor did Smith your Martin. Some very good performances out there. The safety car had just 2 laps to go. So what do you do? Do you pit? Do you stay out? How'd you judge this?
Well, on the game, it only the safety car would come in at the end of this lap, which is exactly what it does. So, if you've got the gap, you kind of got to figure it out. If you don't lose any positions and you feel like you can gain the time on that one lap, then it's definitely worth it, because the gain you can get compared to used tyres, like the likes of Jamie and RDW. I'm surprised that Jamie didn't drop down as much as he did, because I think he does manage to keep P3, but then that is because obviously he doesn't have any penalties. So that's again one thing that this late safety car, I think it really cost Sammy. I think this is what cost him the winner, because I think I think he definitely had at least 9 seconds worth of penalties. I could be wrong, but yeah, it's one of those things that Jamie was quite lucky that he had the likes of RDW behind him that also had older tyres, so it was a car that was in between him to kind of reduce the buffer a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely a really hard call with 2 laps to go, but you know that it's always, the safety car will always give you 2 laps to at least race. So yeah, it's just one of the ones you've got to think on the fly.
And yeah, unfortunately, that did hurt Sammy, but he did have a very good, I think that was his career best fifth position in the end. Roscoe getting his first ever Grand Prix win, and I think this is his best result in his ALR gold career, where I think he finished in a very strong sixth position, if I'm not very much mistaken. Leclerc second out in his racing point, very good stuff indeed. Then, of course, Sammy down in fifth position. Reflections there, of course, he's been hammering those points, hasn't he, so far? RDW getting the first points of his bronze campaign this season as well. And just looking down there, I think that was Dylan's worst performance of the bronze career thus far there, unfortunately for Dylan, then, as we just dropped down all the way to the back then. Roscoe's win there elevated him to the top of the tree. He is now leading the World Championship, 15 points in front of Reflections, and Leclerc jumping up 8 positions as well with a strong first 2 Grand Prix down the bottom there. Silent Shift and Booty, Sir Dave and Special Mighty unfortunately haven't scored any points, and RD Weeds first points of season there, moved him up into 15th position. Fantastic. Ferrari leading then 24 points. Doing a good job, Ferrari. They got a solid team on here, Crystal Maze and Roscoe up until this point, and Haas in second. Williams are in third position as we go on to the Russian Grand Prix. And as we join us at turn number, I think it's 2 actually, isn't it? But okay, oh goodness me, Jamie there, I think he had the wrong track map on there, Emerson. How easy is that to do? Was it just brakes that he had the issue there with?
Well, yeah, it's quite easy to do because obviously it's such a long run down to that first proper corner. But yeah, it's quite an easy one to do, especially when you're trying to think of all the traffic and everything. I think he probably did it kind of to make sure that he didn't cause any other drivers any damage or himself damage by going into the back of them. So I think it was quite a smart move to realise that he did outbrake himself. So he did maybe just go straight on, as we just saw. Well, that was a big crash, so quite similar to the F2 crash we saw there a couple of years ago. I think it was with Mazepin actually. Obviously, surprisingly. But yeah, it's what I think he did that kind of on purpose to make sure that he didn't affect anyone else's race or himself. Oh my god, I don't really remember this race that much. Oh, this is the one that you had to jump in for, wasn't it? Yeah, that me and Ed did after, obviously, with the technical issues that we did have. So yeah, that was a shame.
And yeah, of course, unfortunately, that was Sir Dave who's doing his best impression of Mazepin there. I'm not really, he's not a Formula One fan as much, so I need to, I might have to suggest to him not to emulate Mazepin. We're just watching Diashi getting a bit squirrely there, and we have a Silent Shift, and then who is in the McLaren. Then we got Diashi going up the inside. Then I think that Diashi there is starting to become a super sub in at bronze at this stage. Of course, he was a silver driver, wasn't he? Before he decided to step aside there, he was having an awful time in silver, wasn't he? There, but I think he was just getting a handle of the car. When he came back in bronze, he was much more of a complete driver, wasn't he? Now I think he did a very good job since coming into bronze. So good stuff indeed. Dylan leads the Grand Prix at the moment now, and Emerson coming up into the Russian Grand Prix. This is round 6 now. Usually I ask about whose drivers you think was. Oh goodness me, his camera race having a bit of a spin now. Who was you interested in going into like halfway through the season? Who did you think there was going to be on promotion? Who was going to be champion and who was going to be relegated?
I mean, there was such a to begin with, there was such a tight fight for the top 6 or 7 places, because you had Sammy, who, like I said earlier on, was a bit. He wasn't as good in the race, but in qualifying, he definitely had the pace. So I thought that maybe towards the end of the season, he might be able to get that a little bit under control and maybe start picking up some good points. But yeah, Dylan was definitely always wanted to be favourite. Roscoe. Marvsky as well. I think Marvsky was maybe a little bit of a disappointment. I think he probably could have fought for the championship, because I think he just struggled throughout the first few races by not having a lot of time to practice. But yeah, I think he definitely got P3, I think, and he did get promoted. Kamara Racer and Crystal Mazer are both drivers that you would have thought would have been up there. Same with Theo. Jamie obviously getting those podiums again. He was like a bit like Sammy, that he was really great in qualifying early on, but he didn't quite have the luck in the racecraft in the race situation to score a lot of points, which he did rectify later on in the season. And then RD Wee as well, which I kind of he struggled a bit in qualifying at the beginning, and then he kind of did pick up a little bit. Same with Cryptic Alibi, like he could have been up there. It was really close, but like Dylan was the only one who was scoring consistent points week in, week out. Because Crystal Maze and Kamara Racer, I think they both didn't finish in Hungary, or they had incidents in Hungary where they didn't score a lot of points, and that kind of happened quite a few times. So yeah, it was probably really tight title fight coming up to like the last couple of rounds, where a few drivers start to make a little silly mistakes, and it cost them a lot of points, because Dylan, as we saw in Brazil, that he just didn't give up, and that's all you've really got to do when it comes to a championship fight, is you just got to stick at it no matter what happens to you, and that's the sign of like a proper champion, is someone that never gives up no matter what happens.
And that's exactly what you know, Emerson, being a two-time world champion. But of course, I'm going to ask you another question about the shortened season. But before we do so, Roscoe crossed the line now to pick up a win, or so we thought then. But unfortunately, penalties really robbed him of that. And Morsky, though, took the Grand Prix win in Russia there. And I think that was his first Grand Prix win of his career in a bronze. Fantastic indeed there. Dylan, 4/10 of a second shy there. I must say, you did mention earlier on about how close it was with a bronze in the race wins there. We're going to have a closer one, I think, later on as well. But Morsky picking up his first Grand Prix win. Shatters seems to be up and down, doesn't he? There, but I gotta say, when he hooks it up there, he really has a good race. I think he had a great race in Abu Dhabi as well, just a few days ago. Cryptic Gallop by well, it's not very good in qualifying, but he did love a lot of those driver days, and he actually getting some strong, solid points as well. RDE once again in the points, they're doing a great job. Silent Shifting getting his first point of his season there. Crystal Maze, who started off so well, I think he had 3 pole positions on the bounce, didn't he, to begin with? Was really looking head and shoulders above everyone else, but unfortunately that didn't go too well, as we got 3 retirements there. As that Ginger Race didn't even get off the mark there, which is a bit silly there, wasn't it? Morsky took the championship lead there, 4 points in front of Dylan. Dylan, though, has moved up into second position. Roscoe with that incredible win in Italy there, unfortunately dropping down in the third position there. We've also got Shatters, that great performance last time in Russia, as moved him up 3 spots as well. And RDE there, 7 more points. Well, I think that was his last points of his season, unfortunately. Ferrari now very much under the caution as Williams jumped up to a fantastic second position there. I would say it's all down to me, but that's a joke, isn't it? Renault have gone up into 4th position in the constructors as well. We go on to the Japanese Grand Prix then, and round 7 then has Dylan that gets a very good start. And once again, that just oh my gosh, I've got to say, Sammy there, I think he was listening to some music then. He was shaking his booty from left to right going down into turn 1.
I don't think he did have control of his car at the start of this race. I can't remember it, that he had to. I think he has to leave and rejoin back. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the race that happens.
Oh, that's very unfortunate indeed. But coming back to Sammy, actually, you just mentioned about how good he was in qualifying in Italy, and he was on the front row here then, so that's cruelly robbed Sammy of a potential good point scoring opportunity, or maybe even a podium or a race win. But Dylan there leading the Grand Prix at the moment. Then we've got 2 McLarens right in the thick of things. Then this is round 7 of bronze, then, but I think it's round 18 normally in a normal season. How difficult is it to? I know you've never raced in a foreshortened season, but how difficult is it to only have 11 Grand Prix on the calendar, and the pressure must be immense, doesn't it, to get the job done?
Oh, well, it kind of depends on how you take each race, to be honest, because a lot of the time I don't really try and think about the championship too much. You kind of just got to think about each race as it comes. And I think that's exactly what kind of Dylan used to do in these kind of situations. He used to think like second is better than not scoring any points and losing out on first type of situation. But yeah, because obviously it's a short season, you do have to make every point count. So even if you have to like box later on towards the end of the race, and you get that extra point for fastest lap, I mean that could come in clutch towards the end of the season. And yeah, I think that's exactly what Dylan did a lot better than a lot of drivers, was damage limitation when he wasn't doing that well. Because I was quite surprised. I think he only got 1 race win, which you obviously had your stats at the end of the season, which I didn't really realise until you showed it, that yeah, he only had the 1 win, which I was really surprised about, because it's not often that you hear about a champion. I know obviously, like you said, it's the shorter season, but yeah, to have only 1 win and then be crowned champion was quite a shock to me.
I think it was Keke Rosberg only had 1 Grand Prix win, didn't he, in the 1982 World Championship campaign? And of course, he took that title that season. I think I might be wrong on that one, but it sticks in my mind for some reason. And of course, you was talking how much Dylan and Co really maximises their opportunities. Unfortunately, Crystal Mates has the pace, but he does seem to be involved in a lot of incidents, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely. It's just something you've kind of got to learn, which I think was a kind of a struggle for a lot of these drivers, that they haven't really raced together, and you do have to learn what drivers' kind of style is, because there's definitely a lot of drivers that race more aggressively compared to others, and some like to do their own kind of strategy in a race and not make it easy for you, but they don't really fight a lot of positions if you're on an alternative strategy or something. So yeah, you do have to learn kind of the grid that you're racing in, and the drivers, and kind of what you do learn what a driver would usually kind of do in a certain situation. Like I know Sammy's a real fighter for any position, and he never really seems to give it up, which is completely fair enough. Like he's got every right to do that. But yeah, he's definitely one of those guys, is Sammy. And I think Crystal Mace is quite similar to that. Obviously, sometimes being that aggressive type of racer does always wish to see the McLaren there get hit round quite a few times. He'd probably be vomit inside that helmet. Yeah, it's just one of those things that you've just got to get used to, which I'm sure these drivers will do over time. I mean, I was never the same when I first started. I was involved in a lot of incidents in the first few seasons, and it cost me the championship in 2 seasons.
And I got to say that the person who spun many things around there and was actually Sammy, and I don't know how he didn't get damage to that car, but Sammy was very much on it like a car bonnet in the Japanese Grand Prix, and I think you are right, Emerson, he didn't have control of his car, did he? Which has cruelly robbed Sammy off, I think, what would have been a fantastic podium, because he looked absolutely flying around here, as we got Marsky, unfortunately, who you mentioned there earlier on there, Emerson, that he was probably one of the championship contenders, wasn't he? Unfortunately, down in 11th position as well. So we're coming into the final lap as well, and look at how close this is between two reflections, Sammy and Co. Look at that then, there's Leclerc as well. Another driver that seems to be fast, but also gets involved in a couple of incidents, and same with Camera Racer. And Camera Racer, I think, is the most experienced driver on the bronze grid then. I think he had 30 Grand Prix starts towards the end of this season then. So very good stuff indeed then. It's Dylan there. I think this is his, as you mentioned there, Emerson, this is his one and only Grand Prix win then. What a way to do it in the Japanese Grand Prix. I feel that this is up there with the top 5 circuits in the world, isn't it? Where with Spa and Italy as well then. Dylan there, that a great win there from pole position to checker flag then, but it was quite a tense one, wasn't it? Diashi, a strong drive in second position, really helping the Red Bull. The Haas drivers, and that is their best result so far. Critic alibi from 20th to 4th. Magnificent stuff indeed then. Sam there, second on the grid then. I think he was a star in Japan, he really was indeed. Chappie was a late arrival into bronze then, and again picking up some decent points then. And I think Chappie is going to be a point scoring machine next season for every team he is drawn into as well. Showers in 9th position. Booty delight getting his first points of his career as well, so hats off to Booty, well done indeed then. Vintage just outside the top 10 in 12th position. Vintage had a very quiet bronze season, which is Emerson, what did you make of Vintage this season? Because he was very quiet. I think he only scored 8 points in the whole of the season.
I think, again, he was one of those drivers that seemed to get quite unlucky during a lot of the races, and he kind of just seemed to come up involved in a lot of the incidents, sometimes not even out of fault of his own, just getting caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time and just not getting the rub at the green. But yeah, like you said, he was a bit disappointing, but I think he'll be back at it next season, obviously with a new game, fresh slate. I think he'll be one of those drivers that you can always rely on, to be honest. He'll never give up, Vintage, and he always will give 110% no matter what happens to him in the race. Yeah, he's just. I think he's one of those drivers that you want as your teammate, to be honest, because he doesn't get involved in like things that are always his fault, but sometimes, especially this season, he did get quite unlucky with incidents getting caught up with it. But yeah, he did a good job, I think, to get the. Like you said, he only got 8 points, but like I said, he did get quite unlucky, I think.
And you see in the championship standings there, Dylan took the lead in the championship for the first time at round 7, and that's how competitive bronze was, wasn't it? It was a tale of like 4 or 5 chapters, wasn't it? We had Crystal Mates at the beginning, then we had Roscoe, and then it was reflections with his incredible consistency. Now it is Dylan, and I think from here on in, Dylan just didn't look back after that. I think he really started to elevate himself in a pretty impressive style as well. As we're just watching, I think that is Jamie there, good on the outside, a very good manoeuvre there from Jamie on the outside of Shadows. Brilliant stuff indeed, going into the circuit of the Americas. Of course, we did hear Knowlesy's take on the on this Grand Prix here in Austin. What's your take on it as well? I must say, I'm not a big fan of this circuit.
Oh, well, yeah, I know a lot of drivers don't actually like it, but I think the designer of the circuit took inspiration from Silverstone going into this first sector, from Maggots and Beckett's, and I actually really, really like this circuit. It's one of the most satisfying laps to get right in qualifying and in the race. It obviously is quite hard to not exceed track limits going into that first sector, but you can really gain a lot if you do get that right. As we see, look, we're only on 7 laps and almost the whole grid's almost got a penalty, so obviously a lot of drivers do struggle around here, but it's really, really fun circuit, I think, because it's kind of got a bit of everything. It's got the high-speed straight, the high-speed corners, and then also some slow-speed corners, which is kind of a really good balance to overtaking. Yeah, I think it's a really good circuit, to be honest, and obviously you've got that tower just above us there. You can kind of see the whole circuit, and then obviously we had that famous guy in real life with went up to the microphone and did the meow noises and everything, didn't he? But yeah, I think I said something in the commentary which kind kind of turned into a bit of meme in this race, but I'm not going to repeat that.
Oh, please do. We want another meme, Emerson.
Would you want one last yeehaw?
Yes.
Yeehaw.
Good effort. We're just watching Theo, who's just trying to recover there, going into the S as well. As Emerson said, then a bit of everything. Then we've got the Suzuka S's, and we've also got the Bahrain infamous turn of 9 and 10. I'd say that's the hardest turn of the whole of the season. Bahrain's turn 9 and 10. So it's not as perfect as the Bahrain turn 9 and 10. Is that we've also got the Istanbul, the famous turn 8 as well, which I'm fingers crossed we're going to have the Turkish Grand Prix on the calendar in ALR next season. But I can be a dreamer, can't I? Diashi leading the Grand Prix and then RDW then could smell the barbecue on the right hand side as we're going down that long back straight as well, and going on the outside of Reflections. Goodness me, Emerson, that was a quality manoeuvre.
Yeah, that corner you can kind of take two ways when you're attacking. You can either obviously throw it down the inside of the DRS going into it, or you can do what Reflection did there and go on the outside. Oh no, sorry, RDW go on the outside and take up the speed, and then get the inside for the next part of the corner. Yeah, it's a really good overtaking spot. It's probably the best one on the circuit, to be honest. But then you just saw as well, there's a couple of cars throwing it up the inside, going into that left-hander, because obviously the racing line loops round to the right, and then you've got to swing back in to turn left. That's the ideal racing line, but you can throw it up the inside, as we see. Who's that? Is that Shadows? Is it? Sorry, yeah, Shadows just throwing it up the inside. Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. You can just throw up the inside of that corner there. So there's plenty of places to make a move on this circuit, and obviously that back straight is one of the easiest ways to do it.
It's very inviting, isn't it? I must say that, and I think the drivers love it then, as we got a Ferrari then of a Crystal Maze, unfortunately, having another incident there at Crystal Mazes, but when he gets it right, he is phenomenal. Remember the first opening couple of rounds then, when he was qualifying was perfect then, he seemed to be running away with it. But look at this then, as we got a great battle here between Crystal Maze, Sir Dave, I think, is in there as well, by the looks of it. I can't see it. I think that's RDW actually. Unfortunately, Conor Crawford off my rear end there, which I got to say, he won't be the first and he won't be the last either. Dylan there's down the back straight and doing a great job then. Diashi at the moment now, I gotta say, he was looking like he was the king of this circuit, Emerson. Absolutely, look at that then. Now, a controlling lead of almost 7 seconds. That's unheard of in league racing.
Yeah, he did the alternative strategy, because obviously ideally on this game, as we do see you spinning around there, Sean.
My best Colin Minogue impression.
Yeah, he actually did do the alternative strategy. He started on the softs, and obviously because he got that pole, he was able to get the gap early on, break away from that DRS, and just run his own race. And obviously, Dylan does close up towards the end of the Grand Prix, but he didn't have the laps to do it. And I think Diashi obviously doesn't get any penalties. He just does his own thing, and he gets the win in the end. So it worked out perfectly for him, because a lot of other drivers couldn't really match him in that sense. I think what helped him out a lot as well was, when he did pit from his softs, he come out with a lot of free air, which is definitely something you've got to look out for if you are starting on those soft tyres, that you come out somewhere that's quite nice, that you can just set lap in, lap out of just fast laps, excuse me, sorry. Yeah, you just got it, which he did perfectly, and it was a great race from Diashi, which I think, is he in bronze next season? I think he is. So I think if he keeps up this year's, then he's definitely going to be one to look up for in the championship, I think.
Quote Emerson on that, by the way. We're going to be remembering that in next season review. We got Diashi win the Grand Prix. I think that was his first Grand Prix win of his ALR career and of his bronze season as well. Fantastic. Dylan in second position once again on the podium now. Dylan is a podium machine, isn't he? Camera racer, a strong driver, camera racer. Like Crystal Maze, there's a lot of drivers in bronze next season, which seems to struggle with consistency. And I've got to say, that's a recipe for a fantastic season, isn't it? I'm loving that. We had a great battle with, I think it was with Roscoe and Sammy towards the end then, and unfortunately Simon dropped down to 10th again. That is the penalties there. Jamie, all right then, had a bit of a disastrous Grand Prix, unfortunately. And in the championship then, look at Dylan, he's now 36 points in front, and that just shows that the inconsistency behind him is really costing drivers. Roscoe jumped back up in the second position. Great 17th there for Roscoe. Chappie there doing a good job on his first couple of races there for bronze. Fantastic stuff. He's definitely going to be top 10, I reckon, next season then. In the Constructors Championship, Williams now got a 15-point lead over Haas and Racing Point have moved up into a third position. Strong performance there. Look how close this in the constructors. Absolutely unreal, isn't it? Look, there's teams jumping up and down then before he end the season review in Abu Dhabi for one last time. And Summer Wings on his debut there, because usually he's a gold driver, dipping his toe in the bronze end for the final race of the season end. But him and Theo then was getting very closely acquainted. We had a Verge safety car right from the get-go. He's Chappie, who had a great season. Unfortunately, ended the season quite instantly, really, as he was basically out before he even got into turn one. Then, Emerson, what do you make of your experience of bronze end? Of course, who has really caught your eye? Who has surprised you, and who has been a disappointment?
Well, I mean, I think you've got to look at Dylan, obviously, doing what he did this season, just being super consistent. I think he's going to go into silver, and I think he's going to challenge, at least definitely for points every week. I know silver's just a super competitive league, because obviously watching Ayrton and helping him out throughout the whole season, trying to be there for him and be his race engineer every race and trying to coach him. Obviously, he had that amazing win in Monza, but yeah, silver's super competitive, and I think Dylan's going to go in there and he's going to really rustle up the grid and kind of assert his dominance, I think, and maybe fight for the championship in silver, because obviously there's three quick drivers going up from silver into gold. So I think Dylan's definitely one you've got to look out for next season, obviously, which isn't really a surprise. And then you've got my disappointment, I'd probably put it as Sammy, unfortunately, just because he had so much potential to have like a really good championship, I think, and he had the pace in qualifying, and he just didn't quite get it done in the race situations, which I was gutted for him, because he obviously he's an ALR veteran, and he's been around since season 1 or 2. I'm not quite sure on that, but two. So he's raced a lot, and I think he really wanted to do well, and I think that kind of what cost him was the fact he wanted it too much sometimes, and he tried a little bit too hard and pushed the car a little bit to the edge, and maybe a little bit too far sometimes. And what was the other thing that you asked before? Sorry.
And who surprised you?
I'd probably put it down as Jamie, to be honest, because he had a really, really tough start to the season, and again, he was really great in qualifying. And he couldn't quite get it done in the races. Both McLarens were quite like that at the beginning, but towards the end, he really started to pick up some. Well, he got back-to-back wins in Brazil and then in Abu Dhabi. He had a really great end to the season, so I think hopefully that's going to be a good sign for him next season to watch out for in bronze. And I also wanted to put a special shout out to Boot Delight, which is obviously your nephew. And I know obviously he's really, really new to the game, and I think he actually had a pretty decent season, considering that. He hadn't really played a lot of the game, and he actually managed to pick up a few points as well, which I was quite surprised about, to be honest, especially watching him throughout the first few weeks. I was surprised that he was going to be able to finish any race towards the beginning, but I think he did a really good job of not giving up, and the fact that he actually scored some points at the end was actually, I was actually really quite surprised about him. So yeah, he definitely deserves a special mention there.
Ironically, the reason why he scored points was actually when I was not around, I think, because I usually crashed out. So there you go.
You weren't shouting in his ear for once.
Yes. Just watching Theo and Summer Wings, and unfortunately came a bit too. Oh gosh, then that was a crazy incident there. Unfortunately, that was. I looked a bit on the violent side to me, Emerson. Maybe am I just looking a bit too much into that? That did look a bit violent. Was that right?
No, yeah, I was gutted for Theo when that happened, because him and both Summerwing were having a really great fight, and yeah, I think in my opinion Summerwing did make the two movements when defending, and he definitely was too aggressive in that move and pushed Theo into the wall. Not necessarily on purpose, but yeah, definitely was quite violent and aggressive, which, considering there was still about half a straight to go, I think Theo was always going to make the overtake done. So I think Summerwing could have let him have that move, and well, there was another DRS straight coming up just after chicane, so he could have thought again ahead. Alright, there's another DRS zone coming up, I can get him back going into the next chicane. So yeah, it's just one of those situations where you didn't really want to have to fight it too much, because there was another opportunity to re-overtake him coming up.
And that, of course, that is actually brings up what you were saying about Theo earlier on. As we're watching Jamie go at the inside reflections here, was actually Theo was thinking 2 steps ahead, wasn't he? Unfortunately, Summerwing didn't do that, and that cost him potentially a race win. And I think it cost Theo as well. Unfortunately, here's Jamie. Then, yeah, I agree with you. Jamie in Brazil and Abu Dhabi was fantastic. He is. I think that he is going to be quietly. I'm going to say it quietly because I don't want to give him the commentator's curse, but quietly, I think he is actually going to be the favourite for me going into bronze next season as well. But we've got, of course, got a couple of the COBALT drivers coming up as well, who are not slouches by any stretch of the imagination. As we got a very Ginger Reed said, but enough said. But oh gosh, there is Dave ends off his season with a bang. There is him in vintage there. It wasn't seeing eye to eye towards in that race, but less said about that the better, I think. There's Jamie comes out the final turn, and of course he wins the 2 on the bounce there. Dylan there was already crowned the world champion then already by the time we got into this race, and a great performance for Dylan. As we said, it's all about consistency, was it? I'm very happy to say that I won that Grand Prix. Unfortunately, there was a glitch, wasn't there? But Dylan there was brilliant, wasn't he? Of course, Williams also crowned the constructors champions as well. So very good stuff indeed. And there is the final classification, and as the order was completely messed up there. Dylan there, of course, the world champion. Fantastic stuff. With Marsky is going up to silver, and Reflection is also going up into silver as well. Good stuff indeed. Then Dylan, Jamie going up in 7th, and good stuff indeed. Then Booty, Sir Dave, and Silent will be going down into COBALT. So I think that they're going to be doing very well in COBALT next season. Then, so looking forward to that. Williams, Haas, and Ferrari then are the top 3 in the constructors championship. Red Bull unfortunately finished at bottom. Up next is the awards. Enjoy.